Times of George Herbert Walker Bush.
There was breaking news last night, but the Michael Flynn sentencing recommendations came out. Robert Mueller has decided to recommend no jail time.
It's pretty clear that he helped with a number of investigations, but it didn't seem he gave up anything on the question of Trump and collusion.
Defense Secretary James Mattis ordering thousands of troops to stay at the U.S.-Mexico border until at least the end of January.
The Democrats know so much. That is true. And we have to kind of tell everybody how smart we are.
You name the Democratic leader or presidential nominee, they're disconnected with the American people.
This 9-year-old fought his town's ban on snowball fights, and he won.
I thought it was an outdated law, and there's no reason you can't throw snowballs.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
President, so I get the whole White House to myself and I can make more changes.
But you could all in. This is what you see. The world's #1 cable morning news show on this very busy Wednesday.
Isn't that a beautiful song?
It is.
Always loved it. Always loved it.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us. It's a National Day of Mourning.
It is. Today, we honor the life and the legacy of George Herbert Walker Bush on this National Day of Mourning. This is a live look inside the U.S. Capitol Rotunda, where his body is lying in state.
Yes, thousands of people have already waited in line to pay their respects, as well as midnight. As late as midnight last night, the line was still out the door.
That's right, a couple hours long. That was last night. Now, during this hour, they will be starting to move his body toward the National Cathedral in Northwest Washington, and that's where Mike Emanuel is posted on this Wednesday morning. Michael?
Steve Ainsley, Brian, good morning to you. In about 3 hours, President Trump, former presidents, and much of official Washington will be here at the Washington National Cathedral to pray and to say farewell to President George Herbert Walker Bush. As you mentioned, his body remains in the United States Capitol Rotunda, where people have spent hours for the opportunity to go in and pay their respects. The mood in there has been respectful and peaceful. President Trump and First Lady Melania have had some quality time with the Bush family. They went to visit with them at the Blair House yesterday afternoon, and the First Lady also showed Mrs. Bush the Christmas decorations at the White House. Then last night, former President George W. Bush and his wife Laura returned to the Capitol Rotunda. It was an opportunity for them to pay their respects, but also to thank people from all across the country who turned out for their prayers, compassion, and kindness. Former Governor Jeb Bush talked about how his father respected everybody.
The guy was just the most generous, kind person that you'll ever meet, decent, and he treated everybody the same way.
President Trump has commented about the level of detail and the precision of these events over recent days, paying their respects. Expect to see plenty more of that on this National Day of Prayer and Remembrance on behalf of the 41st President. Steve Ainsley, Brian.
And Mike, it's really going to be a bipartisan gathering there, because George Herbert Walker Bush, remember, when he was president, he had a divided Congress and he had to work with people from across the aisle.
No question about that. A lot of people have remarked about how he put country ahead of his own party frequently, did a lot of things that maybe were not short-term beneficial in terms of his political benefit, did what he thought was right, and a lot of people are admiring that now that he has passed.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike Emanuel, you knew it up close and personal. Actually, I remember you were covering his son when he was governor of Texas, and you got to know the Bush family well. Yeah. Mike Emanuel, thanks so much.
Mike.
Thank you so much.
A couple of things stands out. When you and your mentor is LBJ, he was the one who then businessman George Bush talked to about maybe running for Senate. He was congressman then. He said, should I run for Senate in Texas? He said, yeah, you should do that. He's a former president of the United States. He was the president of the United States at the time. And the other thing that stands out, too, is that Bill Clinton and George Bush became friends, showing the whole country that it's politics, but we're still Americans first. And today, I cannot wait for, among the eulogists, will be George Bush. It's going to be fantastic. As Simpson is always entertaining. But the guy that really blew me away in Barbara Bush's funeral was John Meacham. He spent so much quality time with Bush 41 to get that last biography out that he wrote. I think that he really has a perspective on his life, and I think he delivered it great. I look forward to seeing his remarks today.
Well, the family Episcopalians, they go to an Episcopal church up in Maine when they're at Kennebunkport. They also go to an Episcopal church in Texas, in Houston, and that's where the memorial service will be tomorrow once the body is transferred there. And then he will be buried at the library in College Station in Texas. But people waited 3.5 hours last night or yesterday in the cold weather. It was 35 degrees there in Washington, but people just wanted to go and pay their respects.
And a lot of sports celebrities showed up. Peyton Manning, Phil Mickelson, Coach K, Hale Irwin, a legendary golfer. They all visited the rotunda
Cindy
yesterday.
McCain was there, Colin Powell was there, and Senator Bob Dole. We saw him in the wheelchair standing up at 95 years old.
Greg Norman was there, Chris Everett was there, Jim Nance was there, Jack Nicklaus was there, and of course, as you can see right there, Bob Dole, once George Herbert Walker Bush's political rival. They fought twice in public, but later became friends. He saluted right there.
And some strangers, a lot of people that didn't know him but loved him because he served our great country. There was the little boy, the Boy Scout little boy, who was saluting and stood there for a minute, just like this.
Yeah, indeed. Well, he had a very long life. There's the Boy Scout right there. It looks as if he's from Troop 119, National Capital Area. Still don't know his name, but that is an image that really sums it up.
I also think the most impactful thing that's going to pay off politically down the line that we'll hear about is the fact that Trump's and Bush's put everything aside, and they met yesterday, took a tour of Blair House, they took a tour of the White House, and I just know the class of the Bush family, they're not going to be going after this president, and I don't think President Trump will be doing anything like that. I think that the Brett Kavanaugh situation helped heal the rift between the two families. Melania is probably making sure that the rift stays healed, and I think it's really important for the country to see these guys get
Well,
along.
let's hope they buried the hatchet.
I think they did.
They certainly were
It's a
friendly
time of
yesterday.
mourning, and it's time of death.
Yep, the president went up into the Blair House. They met for about 23 minutes, and then he went back to work. All right, meanwhile, let's talk a little bit about this. We finally saw the sentencing memo that Robert Mueller's team put out for Michael Flynn. Remember, it's been close to a year. He's been waiting to find out how much prison time. At the time of sentencing, there was some suggestion that it would be between 0 time and 6 months. And yesterday, the Mueller team put this statement out. Given the defendant's substantial assistance and other considerations set forth below, a sentence at the low end of the guideline range, which was 0, including a sentence that does not impose a term of incarceration, is appropriate and warranted. And what they say is because he was so helpful, he was interviewed 19 different times, despite the fact that he was charged with lying. Apparently, they felt that he was very cooperative. They say no time in the jail.
Well, he could have gotten between 0 and 6 months and a $9,500 fine. And obviously, through that memo, you're seeing that Mueller is recommending no prison time. The false statements were about communications with the Russian ambassador and his work with the Turkish government. But some within the DOJ are saying they don't even believe he lied. And Rudy says there's nothing to do with collusion.
Yeah, we don't know a lot of it because a lot of it's redacted, so there's something for everyone. The Democrats are saying, aha, what he gave up to Mueller's probe is redacted. That'll show you. And then others are saying, really? Is this it? No prison time? You bankrupted this guy, you strung him out for a year, you destroyed his career, he had to sell his house. For what? In the end, what did actually happen? I can't wait to see Michael Flynn's book about what the reality is behind what took place over the last year. Kim Strassel was with us on the couch a short time ago. She's a Wall Street Journal columnist. She said this about what she ascertained from what she read.
We keep hearing that special counsels, well, they're just got to follow all these different crimes as they come across them. This has been the excuse. This is why he supposedly went after, Manafort, Cohen, all these people that have nothing to do with collusion. Well, the very first crime that ever happened here, and so far as I know, the only crime related to Russia collusion was the leaking of Michael Flynn's name, which was a complete felony. And, you talk to people like Devin Nunes, the head of the House Intelligence Committee, he'll say that was the worst leak he had ever seen in the history of the government.
That's right. And are they going to be going after the leakers and the people who did unmask his name? After this, well, we'll see. Maybe the special prosecutor's looking at that. Maybe Mr. Huber is looking at that. Maybe the Inspector General of the Department of Justice. They should. But after it was announced that Mueller wanted 0 jail time, Michael Flynn Jr. tweeted out, God is good. To those who have supported us throughout this process, thank you from the bottom of my heart. I will never forget you.
Yeah, well, that family has been through it over the last year. Additional sentencing memos are expected for Michael Cohen and for Paul Manafort. So some are saying this is a signal that the investigation is winding down.
Let's hope so.
Michael Cohen will go, no, I'll keep talking if you want. I have more to say after 70-plus hours. I wonder if Carly Shimkus has more to say.
I always have more to say. Don't test me.
Okay,
I'll go forever.
You got it.
All right, we do begin here with a Fox News alert. Family members now confirm
The body found outside an Airbnb in Costa Rica is missing Florida woman Carla Stefaniak. A security guard is under arrest after giving conflicting statements to investigators. Officials say the body had multiple stab wounds and head injuries. Carla was in Costa Rica to celebrate her birthday. And Defense Secretary James Mattis ordering thousands of troops to stay at the U.S.-Mexico border through the holidays. 6,000 service members will be posted across Southern California, Arizona, and Texas until at least the end of January. They will continue to install and repair wire barriers and bolster security as a response to the migrant caravan from Central America. 90 suspected mobsters arrested in a massive sweep across Europe. Police conducted raids in Italy, Germany, the Netherlands, and Belgium. The Italian mob group bought and sold restaurants and cafes as a front to launder money, making it hard for investigators to track them down. They're accused of trafficking drugs along with bribery and violence. And more parents are getting their baby names from the First family. The First Lady's name, Melania, surging by 227% in popularity among parents since 2015. That's according to data from the Social Security Administration. President Trump's daughter's name, Ivanka, jumped by 362%. And the name of the president's youngest son, Barron, grew by 90% in popularity.
Crowley,
No way.
I have a prediction. You're going to see Melania dominate in year 3 this year.
You think
because
so?
she is starting to really emerge.
Starting to do more interviews.
You don't mean the name, you mean her.
No, I mean her individually.
Yeah, I think we want to hear more from her. We all, you know, she's beautiful
from the very
and
beginning
she has so
to
many
now,
talents.
we've heard so much more from her since the first few months.
She's the First Lady. We want to hear from her.
Right. I was talking to Carly, and you just took over
That's
the
all.
conversation.
Carly, thank you very much. And you know, the
Steve, we're not allowed to talk, by the way.
apparently so.
This is the Brian,
It's the Brian
Kilmeade show.
talk show. But the great thing about the First Lady yesterday was when she went over to visit the Trumps visited the Bushes over at the Blair House. She invited Laura Bush and the entire Bush family to go back to the White House because there are so many people who were involved in that administration who still work at the White House. And it was a nice day.
Well, since it's the Brian Kilmeade show, Brian, why don't you tell us what's coming up?
If you guys don't mind, I might as well do this.
Do we have a choice?
Does it matter if we mind?
We'll see you tomorrow. Welcome back to the Brian Kilmeade Show.
Okay. Meanwhile, the migrant crisis is crushing Europe. Now, one country will now send them to an island. Mark Stein weighs in.
And what else, Brian?
And the stock market plunging nearly 800 points. How concerned should you be?
The Jeopardy question should have been Brian Kilmeade.
Wall Street Journal is closed today for a national
Wall
day of-
Street.
Wall Street, the stock market.
And the Wall Street Journal. If you're in the Wall Street Journal, come to work. I made a mistake. In honor of President George H.W. Bush's passing.
This after the Dow plunged nearly 800 points yesterday over the uncertainty of a trade war with China.
You look at that number, you wonder what went wrong. That man's going to tell us. Stuart?
Okay, in my opinion, computer-driven trading, algorithms played a very large part in yesterday's drop, very sharp drop. Okay, let me explain it. First thing in the morning, we heard that interest rates had come way, way down, a sharp drop in interest rates. Some people think that is a signal for recession. You get that word in the headlines, recession, the algorithms read it, sell. Then came a flurry of tweets from President Trump in which he used the word tariff man. The computers, the algorithms read that expression, sell. So you got a combination of two factors here. The possibility of a recession, which I think is absolute nonsense. There is no sign of a recession on the horizon at all. Then you got the tweets from President Trump. That was interpreted as, oh, a very hard line on China, therefore we're not going to get a deal. I think that's nonsense. It's a negotiating position. The computers read this stuff and sell. So you got a spiraling down nearly 800
That
points
would make
by
sense
the
because
close.
it seemed like the meeting with the Chinese president, there was a ceasefire.
Over the weekend?
Yes. Look, I think human beings on Wall Street should get a grip. I mean, I'm tired of being whipsawed like this by mathematicians who create an algorithm which tells you to sell when they read the words recession.
Stuart, you know now Wall Street is just one great big computer because that's how they make money now.
It is, and I don't know how you stop this. but I think the humans should get a grip, get back into control of what's going on. Any rational human being would tell you that there is really no sign of a recession on the horizon. It's not there.
Well, part of the, to dig down a little bit deeper, they said, well, the lack of a hardcore reason behind the truce and a roadmap over the next 90 days of what China and the United States actually agreed to was the reason. In fact, Peter Navarro said yesterday, all the hand-wringing going on right now maybe is the fault of us not communicating more precisely about what exactly occurred in their 2.5-hour meeting with China.
And in that Peter Navarro's interview with Bret Baier last night on Special Report,
he was in the meeting.
Right, he was in the meeting. He detailed the fact that Xi Jinping, China's leader, had outlined, what is it, 140 different items on which they would take action. It was a detailed, line-by-line reasoning from China's leader in that meeting about what they were going to do. Now, I thought that was positive, frankly, flat-out positive. And I'm not prepared to accept the view of the computers that tariff man means we get no
Stuart,
deal.
You would think that if there's going to be a gigantic market sell-off, it would be after the 90 days, not on the fourth day.
You're going to get a lot of this. You're going to all kinds of maneuvering as we head up to the 90-day deadline. You're going to get statement from here, statement from there. The market reads this, the market reads that. You're going to get a lot of up and down.
Real quickly, good time to invest right now if you are in it for the long haul?
If you have an iron gut.
Everything's down.
Oh, that's a difficult question. A lot of people think this is a buying opportunity. If you've got a strong stomach and you're investing for 2 or 3 years down the road, I'd say you've got a pretty good shot.
All that's going to be included in your show from 9 to noon live.
All of it.
It's the only thing left in this world we can count on.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Stuart. Well, some Democrats are accused of being out of touch with American voters, but one senator says there's a reason for that.
We Democrats know so much, that is true. And we have to kind of tell everybody how smart we are.
Here's some quick headlines for you. First, an epic world record-setting moment. Fans of the appropriately named Hershey Bears minor league hockey team, look at that in Pennsylvania, tossing nearly 35,000 stuffed teddy bears onto the ice after their team's first goal. They're going to be donated to a local organization.
That's a lot of
kids will
picking up.
love that. I know, but it's
Look at
Christmas
that.
time. Ah, they're all different colors. How cool is that? All right, then also there's this story. The 9-year-old boy in Colorado, we told you about his story yesterday, to overturn a legal ban on snowball fights. His name is Dane Best, and then he joined us on the show earlier today to explain how he got it all done and sets his sights on a new ordinance now. He wants to change the law involving pets.
We made a PowerPoint and we told them the definition of a snowball fight. You can only have a cat and a dog, and you can only have 3 of them. And you can't have like a guinea pig or a hamster or fish.
So he wants to change that law because he does have a guinea pig and he wants it considered a pet. All right, snowball fights had been illegal in a town called Severance, which is in Colorado. Had been illegal for nearly a century. He made the PowerPoint. He changed the law. He got to throw out that first snowball. You can now have a snowball fight in Colorado.
That's
Thank
right.
goodness.
He threw it into the parking lot. Meanwhile, Democrats are accused of being out of touch with some voters, and one Democratic senator from Hawaii thinks she knows why. They're too smart.
One of the things that we Democrats have a really hard time is connecting to people's hearts instead of here. We have a really hard time doing that, and one of the reasons that it was told to me at one of our retreats was that we Democrats know so much, that is true, and we have to kind of tell everybody how smart we are.
Exactly. Here to react, former White House communications director, very smart guy in his own right, author of Trump, the Blue-Collar President, Anthony Scaramucci. Anthony, is that the problem with Democrats? They're too smart?
Well, I mean, listen, I do write about that in the book. I mean, the problem is that they think they're too smart, and so they've totally disengaged from a very large group of people. The other thing they're doing is they're calling people deplorable, white ethnocentrics, nationalists, racists. And so they're missing the point. Like, the American people really just want like a really good job and some aspiration for their children. And so when she's sitting there in that sort of nonsense, acting in that limousine liberal sort of a way, they've opened up a very wide berth for somebody like President Trump to stay in that lane and continue to galvanize his base.
The country's changed so much, and we saw that in the last election. It's no longer the establishment that necessarily is going to win. It could be an outsider who can connect with the people and who can relate. And Middle America found that in President Trump. Who can the Democrats put up that could compete with him?
Oh, well, I actually don't think there's anybody that can compete with President Trump. And I know people will say, oh, geez, come up with somebody. But look, this guy...
Joe Biden says he's the most qualified.
Well, he's the most qualified, and I like Vice President Biden, but he's going to have a very tough time debating somebody like President Trump. I mean, if you look at Vice President Biden's career, every time he goes into contact with the enemy, he fumbles the football on the stage.
Tom Steyer had a big day yesterday, the billionaire.
Okay, so these guys are super untested. Trust me, I was super untested. You go into that arena with these guys and that oppositional research. You showed that beautiful young kid with the Brill cream in his hair. He hasn't been oppoed yet. Okay, so wait till he gets oppoed. Okay, then he's going to start having a rough time. And what ends up happening is a guy like President Trump is battle tested, and he actually understands the base super well. That's a clear indication that they don't understand the base. Now, Beto O'Rourke will come into this game. But again, he probably doesn't understand the fastballs are going to be coming out.
And he met with former President Obama yesterday. Well, if the question is this, Anthony, if the Democrats got the message so wrong, you know, we're much smarter, why'd they win the House?
Well, I think that has to do with the way historical things happen in the United States in terms of the American electorate likes a check on power. And if you go back over 100 years, I think George W. Bush during a war kept the House, but most times presidents lose the House in a situation like this. And if you look at President Obama in 2010, he lost 63 seats. I think President Trump lost 38 or 39 seats, something like that. So it wasn't really that stupendous. And if you look at what happened in the Senate, he picked up a few in the Senate. And so at the end of the day, he's very well positioned. He'll have over $1.5 billion, possibly $2 billion. He'll have Air Force One and his personality. And if he's going against people that think that they're smarter than the American people, here's an aphorism from Richard Nixon. He said, you know, the American people will vote for people that they dislike. They gave Richard Nixon a landslide. But what they don't like doing is voting for people that dislike them. And if you look at those statements there it is.
The deplorable thing.
And there's two issues that are coming back to the president. The Paris climate change, this whole global warming thing. There's more countries becoming Trump-like than non-Trump-like.
Right.
And number two is this caravan has emphasized the need for border security to Americans, not Republicans or Democrats, Americans.
No question on those fronts. And then the third leg of the stool is the economy is actually doing very well. You had Stuart on here 5-10 minutes ago. I'm obviously a trained economist. You are still seeing large growth and wage improvements. Stock market is a little sloppy because we're in probably the toughest trade battle that we've had in 70 years. And so the volatility in the market is expressing that. But I predict that the president will cut a great deal for the American people. We'll be here in February or March looking at a deal that frames up nicely that will lead to an increase in wages for the people that senator thinks she's a lot smarter than.
All right.
Hey, it's
Mooch,
great to be here.
Thank you very much. By the way, if you want to see him make a calzone, go to foxnation.com. Sign up now.
He criticized me. So the only thing I was capable of was sharpening a carrot to the tune of a pencil.
What were you doing? Just saying.
All right. But I did pour the vodka.
He did.
Thanks, Anthony.
All right, coming up.
All right, the memorial service for President George H.W. Bush begins in just a few hours. We're live in Washington with that.
Plus, the migrant crisis is crushing Europe, and one country has a solution. Send them all to an island. Mark Stein has a lot to say about that, and as you can see, he's coming in. Over the last couple of days, we've been saluting the life and times of George Herbert Walker Bush. These are images, as you can see, from the north face of the U.S. Capitol, looking, and as you can see on the right-hand part of the screen, you can see the Library of Congress. On the left, you can see the U.S. Supreme Court. It is from this pool camera that we will see the casket of George Herbert Walker Bush be taken from the Capitol. We believe within the next hour or so. Thousands have streamed past his casket as he lay in state, and now he heads toward Texas eventually, but along the way, he's going to go past the Naval Observatory, where he lived for 8 years as vice president, and then on to the National Cathedral in North Northwest Washington.
Well, the ceremony gets underway at 11 o'clock. That's when the memorial service officially begins. But we begin talking to Mark Steyn right now. Mark Steyn, the outstanding columnist, as he requests that we introduce him as, and commentator. You see him all around. Mark, great to see you.
Hey, good to see you, Brian.
How do you feel about the country's response to President Bush 41?
Well,
I'm stunned by it. I think he deserves it, but I didn't think that Americans would respond like this.
No, and I think it's a lot to do with how he lived his post-political life. He had a rich life. He had other interests, so he wasn't consumed by politics. And something actually bad and unfair happened to him in 1992, I think. But he took it very well. He adjusted to it. He lived a full post-political life for the last 25 years. And I think that plays a large part. He's an object lesson, by the way, in how to live life after you've been president.
Yeah, what stands out the most for you?
In what he did? Well, I think actually a lot of the world of the last 30 years was defined by him. If you remember, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, the Germans wanted reunification. Mrs. Thatcher, for example, objected to it very strenuously, and it was the fact that George H.W. Bush agreed with the Germans on unification that in effect created the map of the new Europe. He was an influential president, consequential president.
He absolutely was.
Right guy at the right time.
Yeah.
You know, and having been in Washington at the time, you know, he had such bad press coverage because he came right after Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
And Newsweek famously put the wimp factor on the cover.
But you know something? I actually think that's well, it's what I like about him. At the Reagan funeral, whatever it was, 12, 14 years ago, Brian Mulroney and Mrs. Thatcher gave very formal eulogies. And there was something actually very sort of touching and in that kind of slightly awkward, goofy way he had when he spoke in public that made what George Bush said about President Reagan actually seem very true and honest and genuine. He didn't speak like a smooth, accomplished, glib, focus group politician. He was just like a slightly awkward, geeky guy, and the way he talked, I mean, people put words in his mouth. Our pal Peggy Noonan wrote in that 1,000 points of light thing. I never knew what it meant. I wouldn't want to see 1,000 points of light suddenly coming out of nowhere. And they always sounded slightly unreal in his mouth because he was actually a very genuine person who spoke like a normal human being as well.
There's something else going on with immigration.
Yeah, in Denmark, they're sending the immigrants or the migrants there to an island.
Right.
What do you think about that?
Well, it's fascinating to me that things that in 5 years ago would have got you prosecuted for hate crimes, the mainstream parties in Denmark, Sweden, all over Europe.
Hungary?
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is it started in Hungary and it's been moving west to Austria, Italy, now Scandinavia. Something is changing there very fast on immigration in the last 5 years. And again, it's slightly the same thing that Donald Trump did 2 years ago. It's like reframing the debate in terms of the interests of the people who are already in the country.
Who put you in office in many cases. And they say, what is wrong with having your nation, putting your nation first, whether it's Denmark, Australia, Brazil, or America?
Yeah, Australia does the same thing. It takes them to rather sleepy Nauru, a former British colony, which is basically an island of made of guano deposits.
And they asked us to take them.
Yeah.
That was the first fight we got with the Australian president.
But if you did, and this is where Trump reframed the immigration debate here, and it's tragic to me that the Republican, I mean, to be honest, that kid who got the snowball ban overturned, brilliant guy. We've got, what is it, a month, 6 weeks left of the Republican House. I would like Paul Ryan to resign and them to make that kid Republican House Majority Leader and get the wall funded, because that kid can do it. The Republicans and Congress can't.
Your take on the Paris riots, what is the big picture message?
Well, the big picture message is that if you take environmental posturing seriously, it bankrupts your nation and turns the people against you. It's like Kyoto. The only country that took the Kyoto Treaty seriously was New Zealand, and then they realized it was bankrupting them, so they pulled out. These are climate change riots. You can afford it if you're Leonardo DiCaprio. If you're like a French guy living in the countryside, you have to drive to work, you cannot afford $7 a gallon gas just because Macron wants to have a gala dinner with Leonardo DiCaprio, Al Gore, and the Prince of Wales. It works at that level. It doesn't work for regular people.
And that's why we have these riots right now.
Yeah.
And they won, by the way.
Yeah, no, they won, and they're the worst riots in France since 1968, and they're middle-class working people riots.
Who speak French.
Yeah. Don't hold that against them.
No, nothing against it. It's a tough language.
Oui, allons-y, monsieur.
I don't know what he said.
Au revoir, mon frère.
Yes, merci.
Merci à tu.
All right.
Bonjour day.
There you go.
We can keep this up for hours.
We could talk.
Yeah, guten Tag to you.
I only know German.
All right.
Eine Apfelsaft, bitte, Fräulein. I can do it all.
I guess I don't know German.
All right, right over there is Carly, and she's got the headlines.
Hey, good morning. Good to see you guys. And an update on a big story we've been following for weeks. The CIA director briefing lawmakers, leaving them convinced that the Saudi crown prince ordered Jamal Khashoggi's murder.
There's not a smoking gun, there's a smoking saw. You have to be willfully blind not to come to the conclusion that this was orchestrated and organized by people under the command of MBS.
Well, the Crown Prince denies knowing about the columnist's murder at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. President Trump has cast doubt on whether or not the prince was involved. This could be Beto O'Rourke's biggest hint yet that he's running for president. According to the Washington Post, the failed Democratic Senate candidate from Texas met with Barack Obama after the midterms. The reported meeting took place around the time Obama called O'Rourke a, quote, impressive young man. And did you catch this awesome Jeopardy answer last night?
800 blank news.
With Steve, Ainsley, and Brian. Fox blank blank. Dave.
What is and friends?
Correct.
That's right, he got it right. Retired Pennsylvania police officer and Army veteran Dave Leffler, he got it right. He won the show and will be back on tonight. Leffler works for the Working Warrior Foundation, which helps veterans find jobs. He won $54,000 so far.
And back on tonight.
And he's a Patriot. How about that?
That was almost a trick question because it was Fox blank blank. If he would have said, what is Fox and Friends, that would have been wrong.
He's a smart man, though.
Yes,
he got it right.
What is and friends?
And I guess he's a viewer, too.
And it's too bad it's one of those games where you couldn't phone a friend. They could have called us.
They also taped it like 4 months ago.
Well, in case they're on a phone a friend, give them your phone number.
You got it.
So they can...
917.
Carly, thank you very much.
Thanks, Carly. All right, as the nation says goodbye to President Herbert Walker Bush, we are remembering him with one of the Secret Service agents who served on his detail. Coming up next.
Today, we honor the life of George H.W. Bush on this National Day of Mourning.
This is a live look south from the U.S. Capitol in Washington toward the Washington Memorial, where the president's casket will be removed shortly from the Capitol and then transported via hearse to the National Cathedral.
And that is where we find Hillary Vaughn from the Fox Business Network, live with more on today's honors. Good morning, Hillary.
Good morning, Ainsley, Stephen, Brian. Well, yesterday we were outside the nation's capital and saw thousands of people who flew from all over the country to pay their respects, waiting in under 40-degree temperatures for over 2 hours in line just for a chance to say thank you and goodbye to the former president.
President Bush taught us that public service is a noble calling, and his guidance and leadership and example totally changed the trajectory of my life and brought me to D.C.
Well, we came from Hawaii, so I think it's about 6,000 miles, something like that. We flew all night long to come out here to pay our respects to President Bush.
A roster of professional athletes and all-stars also arrived to honor Bush 41. NFL quarterback Peyton Manning, pro golfers Phil Mickelson, Jack Nicklaus, Greg Norman, all came by to pay their respects. We also saw Sully, the yellow lab that has been beloved by the Bush family, come by to say goodbye to his companion that he spent the last few months with and spending time with. Today marks the National Day of Mourning. We are expecting the casket carrying the former president along with his family to arrive here at the cathedral at 11 a.m. And we also are getting word about who will be sitting in that first row in front of the pulpit. It will be President Trump along with his wife Melania, also with former other presidents and their families, including, of course, George W. Bush, Bill and Hillary Clinton, and Barack Obama and his wife as well. Steve Ainsley and Brian.
All right, a day of remembrance there at the National Cathedral. Thank you, Helmy.
Both sides coming together.
It is indeed.
Beautiful.
All right. 12 minutes before the top of the hour on this Wednesday, from shaving his head in solidarity with a 2-year-old battling cancer to skydiving for his birthday, the Secret Service has been with President Bush every step of the way since he was inaugurated. One of the agents on his original detail joins us to remember Bush 41. Next.
Market plunging nearly 800 points. How concerned should you be?
The Jeopardy question should have been.
Good morning from outside the National Cathedral. Our special coverage of the funeral of the 41st President of the United States starts at the top of the hour.
We are about to see a parade of some of the biggest names from around the world who will be here to honor the 41st President of the United States, George Herbert Walker Bush, his family, his friends, and dignitaries from everywhere. So we will be coming up at the top of the hour and looking forward to all of our coverage this morning. We hope you'll join us.
See you then.
Among those paying tribute to President Bush today are the Secret Service agents who will remain by the president's side until he is laid to rest.
Deputy Assistant Director of the U.S. Secret Service, Ron Rowe, was on President George W. Bush's detail. He now joins us from our nation's capital. Ron, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We know that this man appreciated your service, and in fact we've heard some stories in the last 48 hours or so about how they would stay at the White House on Christmas Day, for instance, so that members of the Secret Service could have time with their families. But tell us a story about when George Herbert Walker Bush shaved his head.
So that was in 2013. We had a member of our detail, his son, had been diagnosed with a serious medical condition, and the detail collectively made a decision to shave their heads bald in honor of the struggle that our agent's son was going through. And Timberwolf, as his call sign was, decided to join in, and he shaved his head as well. So it was truly a touching tribute, and we were certainly honored by that.
Did you ever get to meet him? I know you were in detail with 43, but did you meet his dad?
Coming in, and he's going to...
I did. As a young agent, I spent some time protecting and supporting the detail when they would come to South Florida, which is where I started my career. But while I was assigned to the Presidential Protective Division, I spent more than one Christmas at Camp David and did have some interaction with both the former Mrs. Bush and President Bush.
Can you share one of those stories?
You know, I wouldn't be a very good Secret Service agent. You know, we're allowed to be in the personal lives of our protectees, and we respect their privacy.
Well, one thing that is public, and we just saw an image, Ron, was when George Herbert Walker Bush, a couple of times on his birthday, would go skydiving. And it's one thing to think, yeah, that guy's like 80-something years old and he's doing that. What people don't understand is in attendance there in the sky are your agents, right?
Well, actually, it was the Army Golden Knights that prepped him for that, and we were there to receive and provide, be there to receive when he landed, and he touched down twice with no issues.
We are Ron, I actually had the opportunity to jump with the Golden Knights, and I remember getting ready to prepare for that. And I said, now, how many times have you jumped someone? He goes, Ainsley, I jumped President H.W. Bush a few times. So I knew I was in good hands because he would only jump with, you know, the most experienced. What did did he ever talk to you about that? Did he ever talk about that experience? Why you wanted to do that?
No, he never shared that that I'm aware of with me or any of our agents.
Well, he had been a naval aviator, so I'm sure that's in his DNA. You know, Ron, for the men and women who work for the Secret Service, protecting the first family, it's not just a job, because even though you're supposed to be in the background, you become attached to these people.
We do. So this is a national special security event and something that we're prepared for, we're built for. We certainly hope we never received this call, but we did. And so now we've gone into mobilizing our plan, and when somebody is with us for 38 years, you know, you do develop that bond. We see them, you know, after the lights and after the camera and after the glitz and glamour of the presidency has left, and they're in private life, and we get to see them as who they are, and their grandfathers and grandmothers and fathers and mothers. And for us, we're just honored to be allowed to be given access to their private lives, and we certainly cherish it, and we provide not only protection for them physically, but also to protect their private life and respect their own personal matters.
All right, well, Ron, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you. More Fox and Friends just moments away.